Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. I'm Christine Downs,
And I'm Eric Mackey.
and we're trainers for Northeast PBIS. Today, we're going to be talking about database procedures for monitoring progress. The content for today's training was developed by Northeast PBIS and the Center on Positive Behavioral Interventions and Support. So, as you remember, this is our roadmap for getting started with PBIS at the Tier 1 level. Hopefully by now you've had time to go through the first 7 steps. And today we're going to focus on developing database procedures for progress monitoring. So please take a moment to open your Getting Started workbook to section 2B8, and you may want to have your action plan handy to take some notes. You can also find some supporting documents on supporting resources in Appendix K. So remember, data is our friend. It helps to keep us from simply admiring the problem, and it helps us to clarify problems and monitor whether our solutions are working. Our decisions are more likely to be effective when we base them on data. If we gather data around problems of our students and what's happening around the student when those behaviors occur, we can figure out how we can intervene. Right? Without such quality data, we might be left blaming the student or the parent, which doesn't lend to very many solutions. But using data, we can walk ourselves through a process of identifying a problem with precision, establishing a goal, developing a solution, monitoring the effectiveness of our intervention, and determining, did we meet our goal?
Exactly. There are 4 basic steps you want to walk through when selecting, monitoring, and evaluating your school PBIS practices. It's the same 4 steps for any of these tasks, such as monitoring or evaluating, etc. The first step is figuring out, what do you want to know? Maybe you want to know the scope of a problem, such as, is it a problem with a few students, problem with particular context or location, or a school-wide problem with specific behavior like disrespect. Or maybe you want to know the type of problem, whether it's behavioral or academic. Next, you want to figure out what information you want to collect. Generally, you'll want to collect data on fidelity and outcomes. Remember, fidelity is data that tells us whether you're doing the practices as they're designed. The TFI gives us fidelity data on our overall PBIS practices. However, you'll likely need to develop ways to monitor fidelity for specific practices, like whether adults are giving out the school-wide acknowledgement system. So for that, you might consider using different colored tickets or having teachers write their name on the tickets when they're handing them out. That'll help you to track the fidelity to them giving out the tickets. Outcome data is data that tells us whether we're getting the results that we want. Examples of outcome data include office discipline referral, school climate surveys, graduation rates, attendance, etc. Next, we want to develop methods for collecting and analyzing our data. Generally, we want to think about which data will answer our question, how information should be gathered, and when data should be taken, entered, and reviewed. For more information about data routines, please go see the mini lesson on data routines. Here are some key tips for efficient data analysis. First, make sure to protect time to review the data on a regular basis. Make this a habit. If it's not planned, it's not likely going to happen. Then you want to prepare data summaries in advance of your team meetings. This way, you're all ready to go and your team can just focus on making decisions rather than interpreting. Using graphs, charts, pre-made precision problem statements can really help your team to move swiftly. And make sure that data review is a part of your team's and your school's routines. Next, you want to find and or establish rules for data analysis and decisions so that you can identify whether action needs to be taken using the data or not. So an example of a rule might be if 10 or more students receive an office discipline referral for a problem behavior within a particular context, then it's a systems or a location issue. So for example, if you're at your school, you had 15 students who earned office discipline referrals for aggression on, let's say, bus 3 within the first 3 months of school, then you should probably put together a plan for an intervention for the students on bus 3. Having those pre-established thresholds, cutoffs, norms, and goals can help your team to make decisions swiftly. If you want to see some examples, you can look at Appendix K. Finally, we want to make decisions based on data analysis. This may be when we determine whether an intervention is necessary and identify it in evidence-based practice. This may also be when we decide whether an intervention has been sufficiently effective or not. If it hasn't been, your team may make a plan to improve the fidelity or increase the frequency or the intensity of that intervention. If it has been effective, you may make a decision to fade or discontinue that particular intervention. Here's an example of how a team may go through these steps in monitoring the impact of their PBIS efforts on office discipline referrals. What this team seems to want to know is whether they are making progress in reducing office discipline referrals by 20% in comparison to the prior year. They've decided that their measure is going to be through using the office discipline referrals and related data around problem behavior, location, and time of day. Their plan is to look at average referrals per day per month in graph format, seeing if the frequency of the referrals has been greater than the 25th percentile in comparison to the national sample of schools. And this is over the past 3 months. If the data indicate that they're at or below the national 25th percentile, they move on and they see whether there are students in the data who may benefit from Tier 2 supports. If the data does indicate that their referrals are above the national 25th percentile, then their plan is to do a deeper data dive and look at the office discipline referrals based on the problem, behavior, time, and location. From there, they create a plan to prevent the behaviors from happening, teach a new skill, or change how they acknowledge students. If, based on your data and the thresholds you've determined, intervention is necessary, you'll need to develop some form of action plan. For more details on action planning, please refer to the related mini lesson on action planning. See here that based on their data, they saw that they had 3 months of office discipline data indicating that as a whole school, they were above the 25th percentile, with the 5th grade displaying particular difficulty. After drilling down on the data, they determined that they needed to target aggression on the playground by 5th graders from 11:30 to 12. So they determined a plan for prevention, reteaching, and reinforcement. Based on their data routine, they'll review the data every month to assess the progress. And here are some progress data. After implementing their intervention, the team drilled down into their data, such as the physical aggression on the playground by 5th graders, to evaluate whether their intervention worked. The data showed that they had reduced the problem behaviors to 2, with 2 different students indicating that they had effectively addressed the problem. Remember to show your staff the results of your intervention and their hard work.
Eric, what do you suggest? How often should a PBIS team meet to review the data, and how often should they share it with school staff?
That's a great question. Your team should try to meet to review data at least monthly, but remember, try to have that information prepped in advance so your team can be really ready for it and interpret it swiftly. You don't want to take up your entire meeting on that. And as far as sharing, we would say share data at least 4 times per year, but really you want to try to do that more often. We might suggest trying to share that at least as often as when you're reviewing the data, so monthly.
Great. I agree. And I know monthly may seem like a lot, but remember, the factor most related to sustainability of PBIS is the frequency with which data are presented to the whole staff. So it's really important, right? We should review our data monthly, make plans to share out our data with the school community as frequently as is feasible. Remember, you can share your data using bulletin boards, emails, newsletters, as well as the faculty meeting. They all count as avenues of sharing. Okay, so now as a team, get together and review section 2B8 and Appendix K. Create a goal statement related to student behavior, and then develop an action plan focused on what data you need to collect in regards to that student behavior, who should collect the data, how often that data should be collected and reviewed, and how the data will be shared with your community. For more information, please check at pbis.org, anypbis.org, or contact your trainer. Thanks.
Thank you. Take care.